The fluorescent lights of Harrison and Wells' downtown office buzzed faintly as Nathan Brooks narrowed his eyes at the glowing screen before him. The quarterly reports had to be finalized before the lab closed at 5 p.m. A soft chime signaled the elevator's arrival, and Nathan's stomach tightened when he saw Lily step out, her hand resting unconsciously on her abdomen. She wore a pale lavender dress that made her seem softer, more delicate. For a brief moment, he almost forgot why he was there. Following behind her was Dr. Emily Carter, the OB-GYN whom Melissa had carefully recommended. The doctor's warm, professional demeanor gave no indication that she was aware of the real plan, the additional test to be conducted on Lily's blood sample. Melissa had chosen her connections wisely. Nathan waited until Lily and Dr. Carter disappeared down the hallway before approaching the reception desk. The technician, a young man with Melissa's note clipped to his monitor, gave a subtle nod. "Mr. Brooks, room 4 is ready for you." The cheek swab process took less than 5 minutes. The technician, whose name tag read Ryan, worked with quiet precision, explaining each step in a calm, low voice. "Results typically take 2 weeks," Ryan said, sealing the sample. "But given the situation," he glanced at Melissa's note again, "we'll expedite it. 5 business days max." Nathan gave a stiff nod, unable to find his voice. 5 days. 5 days until he'd have undeniable proof of what his instincts already told him. As he left the clinic, his phone buzzed with a message from Karen. DNA sample complete. Justin's weekly tennis game was useful after all. Amazing what you can achieve with a sports bottle. Despite everything, Nathan managed a faint smile. He and Karen had become unexpected allies, pooling their findings and offering each other support through the chaos their partners had created. The next 5 days dragged endlessly. Nathan immersed himself in work, poring over spreadsheets until his vision blurred. At home, he watched Lily drift through their shared space, humming softly, jotting down baby names in a small notebook she thought he hadn't noticed. "What do you think of Ethan for a boy?" she asked one evening, curled up on their sofa. "Or maybe James?" Nathan forced himself to glance up from his laptop, where Mitch's latest surveillance photos were open. "Whatever you want," he replied flatly. Lily frowned. "You could be a little more enthusiastic about this." The irony almost made him laugh. Instead, he said, "Just tired. Big project at work." "You're always tired these days," she said, her tone tinged with accusation. "Ever since the Harper account." "Don't," he snapped, sharper than intended. "Don't make this about my work." Lily blinked, startled by his tone. "I wasn't. I just meant—" "I know what you meant." Nathan closed his laptop abruptly. "I'm going to bed." He lay awake that night, listening to Lily's even breathing beside him, wondering how many nights she had done the same, thinking about Justin, imagining their future together while pretending to sleep. Finally, on a drizzly Tuesday morning, Melissa called. "The results are in," she said without preamble. "Can you meet me?" They chose a small cafe far from the clinic and their usual routines. Melissa arrived first, clutching a manila envelope. The look on her face told Nathan everything before she spoke. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, sliding the envelope across the table. "The DNA analysis is conclusive." "I know," Nathan said flatly. Melissa hesitated. "There's more. Based on the hormone levels and developmental markers, she's about 12 weeks along." "The holiday party," Nathan said numbly. "That's when it started. When they started planning this." "What are you going to do?" Melissa asked quietly. Nathan pulled out his phone, scrolling to Rachel Grant's number. "Exactly what they'd never expect," he said. "I'm going to let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable." "Nathan," Melissa said gently, interrupting his thoughts. "Don't let this consume you. Don't let them take more from you than they already have." He looked at her, seeing genuine concern in her expression. "I have to do this right," he said firmly. "I need to make sure they can't twist this, can't make me look like the villain. Lily's already been working on that, painting me as the absent husband, the workaholic who drove her away." "We know the truth," Melissa insisted. "Your real friends know who you are." "Sometimes the truth needs help coming to light," Nathan said, recalling Mitch's words. He dialed Rachel Grant's number. "And I'm going to make sure everyone sees it." As he waited for the attorney to answer, Nathan stared at the DNA results, the cold, undeniable evidence of his wife's betrayal. The numbers and percentages were stark, just like the proof Mitch had gathered, the text messages Karen had uncovered, and the signs he'd ignored for months. The time for turning a blind eye was over. It was time for action. Nathan sat surrounded by the usual comfort of spreadsheets and charts, his sanctuary of logic and order, but his thoughts drifted to the heavy atmosphere that had settled over his home. His mouse hovered over a cell in the spreadsheet, the cursor blinking steadily, while the sound of retching from the master bathroom that morning echoed in his memory. Lily had dismissed it as food poisoning from the new Italian place, but it was the third time this week he'd heard it. "Brooks? You with us?" Nathan's head snapped up to see Martin Wheeler, the senior partner, standing at his office door. The older man's sharp gray eyebrows were raised. "Sorry, Martin. Just double-checking these projections," Nathan said, sitting up and adjusting his tie. "The Harper account is showing some interesting patterns in their Q3 earnings." Martin nodded, though his expression held concern. "You've been staring at the same screen for 20 minutes. Everything all right?" "Just distracted," Nathan admitted, running a hand through his dark hair. "Lily's been working late at the agency. Big campaign, apparently." "The joys of being married to an advertising exec," Martin chuckled, leaning on the doorframe. "Sandra went through something similar when she made partner at her firm. It'll pass." Nathan forced a smile, though his stomach knotted further. Lily's phases usually came with excitement. Non-stop talk about creative breakthroughs and client meetings. Lately, she'd been quiet, offering only vague explanations about deadlines. His phone buzzed on the desk, catching both men's attention. The screen showed a text from Karen Hurley, their neighbor. "Need to talk. Important. Can you meet today?" "Take care of that," Martin said, gesturing at the phone. "The Harper numbers will still be here." Nathan nodded, already typing a reply. The unease in his gut deepened as he recalled Karen's weary expression from the mailbox yesterday. Her usually bright demeanor had been replaced with something heavy, almost haunted. An hour later, Nathan sat across from Karen at Grounded Coffee House, a cozy spot a few blocks from his office. The late afternoon crowd had thinned, giving them privacy with their untouched drinks. Karen's fingers twisted her wedding ring, a nervous gesture Nathan hadn't noticed before. Her blonde hair was tied back messily, a far cry from her usual polished look. "I don't know how to say this," she began in a low voice. "I've been debating whether to tell you for weeks." Nathan's pulse quickened. "Whatever it is, Karen, just say it." Her hands shook slightly as she unlocked her phone. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. Steve's been. I knew something was wrong, but I needed proof." She slid the phone across the table, and Nathan's stomach dropped as he saw the screen. Photos of Steve Hurley, Karen's husband, entering the Grand Regency Hotel. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. The next image, taken 14 minutes later, showed Lily walking through the same doors. "There's more," Karen said softly. "Hotel receipts. Text messages. They've been meeting every Wednesday for months." Her voice was steady, but filled with quiet devastation as she described the investigator's findings. Dinners, hotel stays, and trips Steve had lied about. Nathan's coffee sat untouched, growing cold, as Karen continued. Each revelation was another blow to the foundation of his life. She showed him credit card statements, more photos, and a series of recovered text messages. "Can't wait for Wednesday. Same time, same place. Missing you already. Yes. Usual spot. That perfume you wore last time. Drove me crazy. Everything I do is for you now." "I'm so sorry, Nathan," Karen's voice trembled. "I thought you deserved to know. Especially now." "Now." The word hit him like a punch. "The morning sickness," Karen continued, meeting his eyes. "I've seen Lily rushing to the bathroom at neighborhood gatherings. And Steve? He's been looking at real estate in Costa Rica, talking about expanding his business there." Nathan's mind reeled, flashing through the past months. Lily's sudden dislike of coffee, the way she barely touched her meals at dinner, the abrupt phone calls that ended when he entered the room. All the signs he had rationalized away, refused to acknowledge. "How long?" he managed to ask. "The investigator traced it back at least 6 months," Karen said, wiping her eyes. But it could have started earlier. Steve started acting different around last Christmas. The holiday party at their house. Nathan recalled Lily and Steve by the punch bowl, laughing at an inside joke he hadn't understood. How many moments like that had slipped by unnoticed? What are you going to do? Nathan asked, suddenly aware Karen was navigating this nightmare too. She straightened, a determined look flashing in her eyes. I've already called a lawyer. Rachel Grant. She's highly recommended for cases like this. Karen slid a cream-colored business card across the table. You should call her too. We might be able to help each other. Nathan stared at the card. Rachel Grant, family law specialist. The edges were slightly frayed, as if Karen had been carrying it for a while, waiting for this moment. Thank you, he said, his voice hollow, for telling me. For everything. Karen reached across the table and briefly squeezed his hand. We don't deserve this, Nathan. Neither of us. But we deserve the truth. As they left the coffee shop, Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Big presentation tomorrow. He stared at the message, his mind flashing to a detail from Karen's evidence. The distinctive blue and gold logo of the Grand Regency Hotel in one of the photos. The same hotel where Lily claimed her agency held client meetings. Tomorrow was Wednesday. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Nathan moved mechanically through his tasks, his thoughts consumed by every suspicious moment, every strange conversation, every absence. The spreadsheets in front of him blurred into meaningless shapes. At 5:45 p.m., his office phone rang. The caller ID read home. Hello. His voice sounded strained to his own ears. Hey, honey. Lily's voice was cheerful, too cheerful. Just a reminder about dinner with Emma and Paul on Friday. Emma texted to confirm. Emma, their college friend, now a nurse at Central General, had been hosting their monthly dinners for years. Right, Nathan replied, picturing Emma's knowing looks, wondering if she had noticed anything. I remembered. Great. Oh, and could you pick up some ginger ale on your way home? My stomach's been off. Nathan clenched his free hand into a fist. Still, maybe you should see a doctor. There was a pause, almost imperceptible. Oh, it's probably just stress from the campaign. Speaking of which, I should go. Love you. The line went dead before Nathan could respond. He sat in his dim office, staring at the phone, wondering how many lies he had believed, how many signs he had ignored. His computer chimed, reminding him of tomorrow's quarterly review meeting at 2:30 p.m., the same time Lily would be at her so-called client presentation, which he now knew meant meeting Steve at the Grand Regency Hotel, just like every other Wednesday. Nathan opened his desk drawer and pulled out a card he kept for emergencies. Mitch Hawkins, private investigator. Former detective, Metropolitan Police Department. Sometimes, he thought, the truth required professional help to come to light. The Central General cafeteria buzzed with the lunch rush, but Emma's attention was fixed on Nathan across the table. His casual invitation to lunch seemed normal enough, but the exhaustion in his eyes and tension in his posture told a different story. You look awful, Emma said bluntly, pushing her salad aside. Her scrubs rustled as she leaned forward. What's going on? Nathan glanced around and then spoke in a low voice. Have you noticed anything different about Lily lately? Emma froze, guilt flickering across her face before she masked it. Different how? The morning sickness, Emma. Nathan watched her closely. You're an OB nurse. You must have noticed the signs. Emma's fork clattered against the container. Nathan, patient confidentiality. She's not your patient, is she? His voice was calm, but his grip on his coffee cup tightened. Just our friend, who's been throwing up every morning and skipping wine at dinner parties. Emma's professional facade cracked slightly. I've suspected, but she hasn't said anything to me. I thought maybe she was waiting to surprise you. Like she surprised Steve Hurley. Nathan's words were sharper than intended. Emma's face turned pale. Oh God, she whispered. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Karen's voice was shaky. But you knew something was off, he pressed. Those looks you gave her at dinner parties, the comments about morning sickness easing in the second trimester. I thought I was helping, Karen admitted, pushing her untouched salad aside. Dropping hints so she'd know she could talk to me. I never imagined. She trailed off, her expression shifting to dawning horror. The timing. Oh, Nathan. Nathan pulled out his phone, showing her the photos Mitch Hawkins had uncovered. The private investigator had been meticulous, documenting weeks of Wednesday afternoon meetings at the Grand Regency Hotel. Karen's hand flew to her mouth as she recognized Lily and Steve in the images. I need your help, Karen, Nathan said softly. I need to know for sure. About everything. Karen straightened, her practical demeanor taking over. You're talking about a DNA test. Can you arrange it? Discreetly. She nodded slowly. I have contacts in the lab. We can do a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. It's completely safe. Just requires a blood sample from Lily and cheek swabs from the potential fathers. The last words were barely audible. How do we get her blood sample without her knowing? Nathan asked. Karen's mind worked quickly. Her first prenatal appointment. She'll need routine blood work. I can make sure the right people handle the samples. And if she's already had the appointment? Trust me, she hasn't, Karen said with confidence. Nathan raised an eyebrow. She's been asking me general questions about first appointments. What to expect. She's nervous. Typical first-time mom behavior. The phrase first-time mom hit Nathan like a gut punch. Karen reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm sorry, she said again. I should have said something sooner when I started suspecting. I never thought Lily would. None of us did, Nathan interrupted gently. That's how she's gotten away with it for so long. Their conversation was interrupted by Karen's phone vibrating. She glanced at it and frowned. I have to get back to the clinic. Give me a few days to set everything up. She met his gaze. And Nathan? Whatever the results show, you've got people in your corner. Don't forget that. As Karen left, Nathan's phone buzzed with a message from Mitch Hawkins. New development. Meet in my office. 4 p.m. Mitch's office occupied a small space above an old travel agency. Filing cabinets lined the walls, and a worn leather couch faced a desk cluttered with surveillance equipment. Mitch, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair, was sorting through photos when Nathan arrived. Your wife's getting careless, Mitch said without preamble. Or maybe just overconfident. Either way, we caught a break. He spread several photos across the desk, showing Lily and Steve at a small cafe across town. They were sitting close, holding hands across the table. In one photo, Steve's hand rested on Lily's still flat stomach. Today? Nathan asked, his throat dry. 2 hours ago. Not their usual time or place. Mitch shuffled through more photos. But that's not the most interesting part. Watch this. He played a video on his laptop, showing the cafe's exterior filmed from across the street. Lily and Steve exited together, walking closely. They stopped at Steve's car, and the audio picked up parts of their conversation. Tell him soon, Lily's voice. Mexico by Christmas, Steve replied. Can't wait to start our family, Lily added, her hand resting on her stomach. Nathan sank onto the leather couch, the weight of their words pressing down on him. Mitch stopped the video, watching his client with quiet concern. There's more, the investigator said carefully. My contact at the Grand Regency Hotel gave me their full booking history. Every Wednesday for the past 8 months. Same room. Always booked under S. Harrison. Mitch paused. Harrison is Steve Hurley's mother's maiden name. 8 months, Nathan repeated numbly. The Christmas party. Mitch nodded. That lines up with what we've uncovered. Want to tell me about Christmas? Nathan closed his eyes, the memories surfacing. We hosted the neighborhood holiday party. Lily insisted, even though we usually alternate with the Hulleys. She and Steve spent most of the night by the punch bowl, laughing about something. He let out a bitter laugh. I thought they were just being friendly neighbors. That's how it usually begins, Mitch said gently. Based on the hotel records, the affair started around then. Mitch flipped through his notes, his expression grim. The first visit to the hotel after. The pattern shifted was about 12 weeks ago. Longer stays, room service for 2, no alcohol. She hasn't been drinking, Karen confirmed. Said she was on a cleanse for work, supporting a client's wellness campaign. Mitch gathered the photos into a folder. What's your next move? DNA test, Nathan replied. A friend at the hospital is arranging it. And I'm meeting with a lawyer, Rachel Grant. Mitch whistled. Good choice. Grant's tough. She handled the Johnson divorce last year. The husband didn't know what hit him. That's the plan, Nathan said, standing up, feeling more grounded than he had in days. Keep tracking them. I want to know everything, especially about these Mexico plans. Already on it, Mitch replied, handing him the folder. One more thing. Lily's best friend, Sarah Kim? She's been running interference. Takes calls from your house phone when Lily's with Steve, provides alibis about her working late at the agency. You might want to add her to the list of people who knew. Nathan added this betrayal to the growing weight he carried. Anyone else I should know about? Still digging. Richard Coleman, Steve's business partner, has been covering for him at company events. Claims Steve's at meetings when he's actually... Mitch gestured toward the photos. Keep going, Nathan said, heading for the door. I want to know exactly who helped them deceive me. The waiting room at Central General's Lab Services Department seemed designed to amplify discomfort. Mint green walls, outdated magazines, and the persistent hum of fluorescent lights created a stifling atmosphere. Nathan sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, pretending to check emails on his phone while actually watching the elevator doors. Karen had texted him the details. Lily's first prenatal appointment was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. Standard protocol included routine blood work. All Nathan needed to do was provide his DNA sample before the lab closed at 5 p.m. The elevator dinged, and Nathan's chest tightened as Lily stepped out, her hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. She wore a pale lavender dress, making her seem softer, almost fragile. For a brief moment, Nathan nearly forgot why he was there. Walking behind her was Dr. Emily Carter, the OB-GYN Karen had recommended. The doctor's kind, professional demeanor betrayed no hint that she was aware of the plan. The additional tests to be conducted on Lily's blood sample. Karen had chosen her contacts carefully. Nathan waited until Lily and Dr. Carter disappeared down the hallway before approaching the lab's reception desk. The technician, a young man with Karen's note clipped to his computer monitor, nodded in recognition. Mr. Brooks, we're ready for you in room 3. The cheek swab procedure took less than 5 minutes. The technician, whose name tag read Ryan, worked with quiet efficiency, explaining each step in a low, professional voice. Results usually take 2 weeks, Ryan said as he sealed the sample. His eyes flicked briefly to Karen's note. But given the circumstances, we'll expedite it. 5 business days max. Nathan nodded, unable to speak. 5 days. 5 days until he had undeniable proof of what he already knew deep down. As he left the hospital, his phone buzzed with a message from Karen. DNA sample done. Steve's weekly tennis game made it easy. Amazing what a determined person can manage with a water bottle. Despite everything, Nathan allowed himself a faint smile. He and Karen had become unexpected allies, sharing information and supporting each other through the betrayal their spouses had orchestrated. The next 5 days dragged on endlessly. Nathan threw himself into work, poring over spreadsheets until his eyes burned. At home, he observed Lily floating through their shared space, humming to herself and jotting down baby names in a small notebook she assumed he hadn't noticed. What do you think of Ethan for a boy? She asked one evening, curled up on their couch. Or maybe James? Nathan forced himself to glance up from his laptop, where Mitch's latest surveillance photos were open. Whatever you want, he said flatly. Lily frowned. You could be a little more enthusiastic about this. The irony almost made him laugh. Instead, he replied, just tired. Big project at work. You're always tired lately, she said, her tone edged with accusation. Ever since the Harper account. Don't. The word came out sharper than he intended. Don't make this about my work. Lily blinked, startled by his tone. I wasn't. I just meant. I know what you meant. Nathan snapped his laptop shut. I'm going to bed. Nathan lay awake that night, listening to Lily's steady breathing beside him, wondering how many nights she had lain there, thinking about Steve, planning their future together while pretending to sleep. 3 days into the wait, Karen called him during lunch. How are you holding up? She asked gently. Nathan stared out his office window at the city skyline. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The late nights, the sudden work emergencies, the way she ended phone calls when I walked into the room. Don't do that to yourself, Karen said firmly. You trusted your wife. That's not a flaw, isn't it? When does trust become willful blindness? Nathan asked. Consight. Nathan, I've known you both for years. No one saw this coming. Not even me, and I'm trained to notice things. But you did notice something, he replied. The morning sickness. The changes in her behavior. Medical symptoms are different from suspecting. This, Karen said, hesitating. Have you thought about what you'll do? After? One step at a time, Nathan replied. First, I need to know for sure. Finally, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Karen called again. The results are in, she said without preamble. Can you meet me? They chose a small diner far from the hospital, away from their usual routines. Karen arrived first, clutching a manila envelope. Her expression said everything before she spoke. I'm so sorry, she whispered, sliding the envelope across the table. The DNA analysis is conclusive. You're not. She trailed off. The father. Nathan finished for her, his voice hollow. I know. Karen reached for his hand. There's more. Based on the hormone levels and fetal development markers, she's about 12 weeks along. The Christmas party, Nathan said dully. That's when it started. When they began planning this. What are you going to do? Karen asked quietly. Nathan pulled out his phone, scrolling to Rachel Grant's number. Exactly what they would never expect. I'm going to let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable. And then, Nathan, Karen interrupted gently. Don't let this consume you. Don't let them take any more from you than they already have. Nathan looked at her, seeing the genuine concern in her eyes. I have to do this right, Karen. I need to make sure they can't twist this. Can't make me look like the bad guy. Lily's already working on that. Painting me as the absent husband, the workaholic who pushed her away. We know the truth, Karen insisted. Your real friends know who you are. Sometimes the truth needs help coming to light, Nathan replied, recalling Mitch's words. He dialed Rachel Grant's number. And I'm going to make sure everyone sees it. As he waited for the lawyer to answer, Nathan stared at the DNA results, the cold, undeniable proof of Lily's betrayal. The numbers and percentages were stark, just like the evidence Mitch had uncovered, like the text messages Karen had found, like all the signs he had ignored for months. The time for ignoring things was over. Now it was time for action. The leather couch in Daisy Bird's office creaked as Nathan shifted his weight. The trauma therapist's credentials lined the wall, and he'd been staring at them for 10 minutes, avoiding Daisy's steady, empathetic gaze. You haven't touched your water, Daisy observed, gesturing to the untouched glass on the side table. Her voice carried the same calm as her brother Preston's, but where Preston's was precise, Daisy's was warm. I keep thinking about Christmas, Nathan said, finally meeting her eyes. Not just the party, but the whole season. Lily insisted on new decorations, spent hours making everything perfect. Was she? He swallowed hard. Was she already planning it then? Making memories with him in our home? Daisy leaned forward slightly, her notebook balanced on her knee. Sometimes people compartmentalize. They create separate realities to justify their actions. Is that what she's doing now? Creating a reality where I'm the villain? Nathan asked bitterly. Tell me more about that, Daisy prompted gently. Nathan pulled out his phone and scrolled through the screenshots Mitch had provided. Jenny Moore called yesterday. She and Mark canceled our dinner plans because, and I quote, they didn't want to take sides. He let out a humorless laugh. Sides in what? I haven't said anything to anyone. But Lily has, Daisy prompted. Apparently, she's been having lunch with different friends for months, telling them how I'm never home, how I missed her doctor's appointment because of work. Nathan's laugh was bitter. An appointment I didn't even know about because it was with Steve's private physician, not her regular doctor. How did you learn about these lunches? Preston, actually. He overheard Sarah Kim at Crescent Cafe, talking to another friend about how worried she was about Lily and her situation. Nathan's grip tightened around his phone. Sarah's been her best friend since college. She's been to every holiday dinner, every birthday celebration. She was there when I proposed to Lily at Pierre's 5 years ago. And all this time, she knew, Daisy finished softly. Not just knew, helped. When I'm supposedly working late, Lily calls our home phone from her cell. Sarah answers, tells me Lily's at the office if I call looking for her. They've got it down to a science. Daisy made a note in her notebook. How does that make you feel? How does it make me feel? Nathan stood abruptly, pacing the room. It makes me feel like a fool, like everyone's been laughing behind my back. Richard Coleman, Steve's business partner. He's been covering for them at company events, creating fake meeting minutes, telling people Steve's in conference calls when he's with Lily. Daisy supplied when Nathan trailed off. You know what the worst part is? Nathan stopped at the window, staring at the city skyline below. Richard's wife died of cancer 2 years ago. He gave a eulogy about loyalty and love that made everyone cry. And now he's helping Steve destroy my marriage, helping them fool me and Karen. People are complex, Daisy said gently. Their actions often reflect their own pain more than their true values. Nathan turned back to her. Preston said you specialize in betrayal trauma, that you'd understand. The ripple effect? Daisy nodded. How betrayal doesn't just break trust with one person, but shatters our entire perception of reality. Friends become suspects. Memories become questionable. Every interaction gets re-examined through a new lens. I keep thinking about all our dinner parties, all those knowing looks I missed. Karen noticed Lily's pregnancy symptoms, but she thought. Nathan sank back onto the couch. Everyone thought I knew, that we were waiting to announce it. Meanwhile, Lily's been telling them I'm distant, uninterested, too buried in work to notice her. Creating a narrative, Daisy observed. Creating an excuse, Nathan corrected. Setting the stage so when everything falls apart, everyone will say they saw it coming. Poor Lily, trapped in a loveless marriage with a workaholic husband. No wonder she fell for Steve, with his romantic gestures and surprise lunches. You sound angry. I'm furious. Nathan's voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. Not just at them, but at everyone who helped them. Sarah arranging their alibis, Richard covering their tracks. Our friends believing her lies without ever asking me. What do you want these people to know? The question caught Nathan off guard. He had spent so much time gathering evidence, documenting betrayal, that he hadn't thought about what he wanted beyond proof. He paused, collecting his thoughts. I want them to know that while they were feeling sorry for Lily, while they were helping her deceive me, I was planning nursery colors. I was researching the best preschools, setting up a college fund. I want them to know that every late night at work was for our future. The future she was busy planning with someone else. Daisy studied him quietly for a moment. That sounds like something they should hear. They will, Nathan said quietly. When the time is right, they'll hear everything. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Richard Coleman requesting a meeting. Says it's important. Same time next week? Daisy asked as Nathan stood. He nodded, already composing a reply to Preston. Outside her office, in the sterile hallway of the medical building, Nathan leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. The web of lies surrounding his marriage seemed endless, each revelation adding another layer to the intricate pattern of deceit. His phone buzzed again, this time from Karen. We need to talk. Found something about Mexico. The unraveling, it seemed, was only beginning. The conference room at Rachel Grant's law office boasted a panoramic view of the city, but Karen Hurley's focus was fixed on the documents spread across the polished mahogany table. Her typically immaculate manicure showed signs of nervous chewing, and her blonde hair had escaped its usual precise styling. It's all here, she said, pushing a folder toward Nathan. Steve's been setting up shell companies in Mexico for months. Property acquisitions, business licenses, even school registration inquiries. Her voice cracked. They're not just planning a vacation. They're planning a life. Nathan flipped through the papers, each page adding to the picture. How did you get these? Richard Coleman, Karen said with a bitter smile. Apparently, guilt finally caught up with him. He came to me first, probably thought I'd be the easier target. She gestured to another stack of papers. He didn't just bring documents. He brought proof of every lie, every cover-up, meeting minutes he faked, expense reports he altered. All of it. Rachel, who had been quietly observing from the head of the table, finally spoke. Richard's cooperation changes everything. As Steve's business partner, his testimony carries significant weight. Why now? Nathan asked. Why come forward after helping them for so long? Because of this, Karen said, pulling out her phone and playing a video. Lily's face appeared on the screen, her hand resting on her visible pregnancy bump as she spoke to someone off camera. Can't wait to start fresh. Just us and the baby. No more hiding. No more pretending. Steve says the Mexico office is the perfect cover. Everyone will think it's just a business expansion by the time they figure it out. The video cut off abruptly. Nathan's throat tightened. When was this? He asked. Yesterday, Karen replied. Richard recorded it during a company lunch. She didn't know he was there. Karen's hands trembled slightly. They're planning to leave before the baby is born. Steve's been liquidating assets, transferring funds through multiple accounts to hide the trail. Which is where Richard's guilt finally kicked in, Rachel interjected. He's been helping with the financial arrangements, but apparently, pregnancy fraud and international flight crossed a line even he couldn't justify. A knock at the door interrupted them. Preston Bird entered, followed by a man Nathan recognized from Steve's company photos, Richard Coleman. The business partner looked nothing like his polished corporate headshot. His tailored suit hung loosely, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. I'm sorry, Richard said as soon as he entered. I know it doesn't help, but I am sorry. Nathan studied the man who had played a key role in Lily's betrayal. Why did you do it? Richard sank into a chair, his shoulders slumping. Steve was there for me when Rachel passed. Helped me handle the estate, took care of my clients while I grieved. I felt like I owed him. He laughed bitterly. At least, that's what I told myself at first. Then it just became routine, covering meetings, creating alibis. I didn't think about the real people getting hurt. Until now, Karen said sharply. What changed? The baby, Richard admitted, meeting her eyes. Last week, Steve asked me to help set up offshore accounts for the child's future. He had it all planned, private schools in Mexico, trust funds under false names. He talked about it like it was just another business deal. That's when I realized what I was really helping him do. Preston, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. Do you have proof of these accounts? Richard nodded and pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Everything. Account numbers, transfer records, property deeds. Steve thinks. I'm still processing the paperwork for the Mexico office, but I've been documenting everything. While Preston and Rachel examined the drive's contents on a laptop, Nathan watched Lily through the conference room windows. She stood in the atrium 3 floors below, clearly pregnant now in a flowing maternity dress, accepting congratulations from a group of women. Even from this distance, he could see her practiced smile and the way she rested her hand on her stomach for maximum effect. She's meeting the hospital auxiliary board, Karen said, following his gaze. Sarah Kim arranged it. They're planning a baby shower. She hesitated. Nathan, there's something else you should know. He turned to her, bracing himself. The nursery furniture you ordered? She's been having it sent to a storage unit. Steve's been helping her sell it piece by piece, replacing it with things they picked out together. Karen pulled up photos on her phone. Richard found these on Steve's computer. The images showed Lily and Steve in a high-end baby boutique, examining cribs and rocking chairs. They looked happy, normal, like any couple preparing for their first child. The shower is next week, Karen continued. They've invited half the city's social circle. Sarah's been telling everyone how excited you are, how you're finally stepping up as a husband. While they plan their escape, Nathan finished. Richard cleared his throat. The Mexico plans are set for 3 weeks from now. Steve has a business conference in Cabo. He'll set everything up there, then return for Lily a week later. They've already rented a villa. Rachel looked up from the laptop. This isn't just an affair. This is calculated fraud, international flight risk, potential parental kidnapping. This is my wife, Nathan said quietly, planning to disappear with another man's child while systematically destroying my reputation. He turned to Richard. I need everything. Every email, every document, every conversation you witnessed. Can you do that? Richard nodded slowly. Yes. And there's more. Steve's been recording Lily's calls to your house, the ones Sarah answers. He keeps them as insurance, proof of their alibis. I can get those too. Do it, Rachel ordered. Preston, work with Richard on securing the electronic records. Karen, I need you to document every interaction, every suspicious behavior you've noticed. She paused and looked at Nathan. Are you sure you want to wait? With this evidence, we could move now. Nathan watched as someone else joined Lily's group below. Sarah Kim, carrying gift bags and wearing a broad smile. The two women embraced, their happiness seemingly genuine. Yet another act in their ongoing show. Not yet, Nathan said. Let them think they're winning. Let them get comfortable. He turned back to the group. They've had months to plan this deception. We'll give them exactly what they expect, right up until the moment we don't. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the city, mirroring the turmoil in Nathan's heart. The thunder, when it came, felt like an omen, a preview of the storm ahead. The home office, once Nathan's sanctuary, now resembled a war room. 3 whiteboards covered the walls, each one filled with timelines, connections, and evidence logs. Sticky notes formed a constellation of betrayal, each representing another piece of the puzzle. Rachel insisted on meticulous documentation. Walk me through it again, Preston said, studying the central board. He had stopped by under the guise of dropping off more files, but Nathan could sense the concern beneath his professional demeanor. Nathan pointed to the earliest date on the timeline. The affair started around last Christmas. That matches the hotel records, the first suspicious credit, card charges, and Lily's change in behavior. And Richard confirmed that timing? Preston asked. Yes. He remembered Steve missing their annual end-of-year review. Said it was the first time he covered for him. Nathan replied, moving along the timeline. By February, they were meeting regularly at the Grand Regency Hotel. Mitch's surveillance confirmed the pattern. Every Wednesday, sometimes more often. Preston nodded, making notes in his legal pad. The pregnancy, he asked. Conceived in early March, according to the DNA test results. Around the time Steve first mentioned expanding to Mexico, Nathan said, tracing his finger along the timeline to more recent events. Richard started noticing large transfers in April. By May, they had the shell companies set up, and Lily had been laying the groundwork all along, Preston observed, gesturing to another board filled with social interactions and alibis. The lunches with friends, the subtle complaints about your work hours, the sympathy, while simultaneously playing the excited mother-to-be. Nathan's voice was devoid of emotion as he pointed to a collection of ultrasound photos. She's been sharing these with everyone, talking about how supportive I've been, how we're both so excited. Building her cover story, building her escape route. He corrected himself, and how she's been. He glanced at Preston. Every person who believes her version of events is another potential character witness if things go wrong. Every sympathetic friend is another ally in their plan. Preston studied his friend carefully. You're angry. I'm focused, Nathan replied, turning to a third board covered in legal documents and financial records. Rachel says timing is everything, he continued. We need to catch them in the act, document every lie, every manipulation. No room for denial or explanations. The evidence is solid, Preston assured him. Bernard's testimony alone isn't enough. Nathan pulled a new stack of papers from his desk. Look at these. Sarah's been busy. Preston leafed through the documents. Screenshots of social media posts, email chains, text messages, all weaving a carefully crafted narrative. Nathan, the workaholic husband, finally embracing fatherhood. Lily, the patient wife, supporting his long hours while preparing for their baby. She's good, Preston admitted. The timestamps show she's been planting breadcrumbs for months, building a digital trail of their version of events. While helping them maintain their affair, Nathan added, clicking through his laptop to bring up surveillance photos. Every Wednesday, she calls the house phone from Lily's cell, creating a record of Lily working late while she's actually with Steve. Preston finished. But why document it? Why keep records? Insurance, Nathan said, pulling up an email Bernard had provided. They're covering every angle. If something goes wrong, they have proof of their story. Texts, calls, social media posts, all painting Lily as the devoted wife and me as the absent husband. A knock at the door interrupted them. Karen entered, carrying more files. Her face showed the strain of recent weeks, but her voice was steady. Bernard came through again, she announced, spreading documents across Nathan's desk. Complete records of Steve's financial transactions, wire transfers, property purchases in Mexico. Everything. She laid out printouts. He's been moving money through 3 different shell companies. Bernard provided account numbers, transaction dates, and confirmation of their plans. Preston added, examining the papers. These property records show a villa purchase in Cabo, utilities already set up in Steve's name. Nathan studied the documents, his analytical mind cataloging each detail. What about the business expansion cover story? Completely fabricated, Karen confirmed. Bernard says Steve's been rejecting real expansion opportunities for months, claiming the Mexico deal is a priority. But there is no deal, just empty offices and false paperwork. Which is where this gets interesting, Preston interjected, pulling out his phone. I had our firm's international law experts review everything. What they're planning, taking the baby out of the country under false pretenses, using fraudulent business documents. It crosses several legal lines. Nathan added the new documents to his evidence wall. Have they made any mistakes? He asked, scanning the room. Anything we can use? Karen asked. They're getting bolder, Carlos said. Lily's been asking friends about international schools, saying it's for a client's marketing campaign. Steve's been seen at high-end baby boutiques during business hours. They think they're untouchable. That's exactly what we need, Rachel Grant announced from the doorway. No one had noticed her arrive. The lawyers surveyed the evidence-covered walls with approval. The more confident they get, the more mistakes they'll make. She moved to the central board, examining the timeline. Richard's testimony gives us the foundation. Mitch's surveillance provides proof of the affair. The DNA test confirms paternity. Now we wait for them to hand us the final pieces. The baby showers tomorrow, Karen reminded them. Sarah's turned it into the social event of the season. Half the country club will be there. Let them celebrate, Nathan said quietly. Let them think everything's going according to plan. Rachel nodded approvingly. Keep playing your part. Lily thinks you're clueless, too absorbed in work to notice anything. Steve believes his business expansion story is solid. Even Sarah thinks she's successfully selling your workaholic image to everyone. Meanwhile, Preston added, we document everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every person involved in the deception. Nathan stood at the evidence wall, adding another sticky note to the constellation of betrayal. They've had months to write their story. We're almost ready to show them ours. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the extent of the deception laid out before them. Months of lies, carefully documented. A network of conspirators meticulously mapped. A plan for escape thoroughly exposed. One more week, Rachel said finally. Give them one more week to dig themselves deeper. She met Nathan's eyes. Then we end this. As his allies departed, Nathan remained in his home office, studying the evidence of his wife's betrayal. Tomorrow, she would be the center of attention at her baby shower, accepting gifts and congratulations, playing the role of happy, expectant mother. Steve would maintain his business expansion facade, laying groundwork for their escape. Sarah would continue spreading their carefully crafted narrative, and Nathan would wait, gathering evidence, preparing for the moment their elaborate house of cards would finally collapse. The storm was coming. He just had to be patient enough to let it build to maximum effect. Morning light filtered through the kitchen windows of the Brooks residence, casting a soft glow on Lily as she arranged fresh-cut flowers in a crystal vase. Her baby bump, now impossible to hide at 5 months, pressed against the counter's edge as she fussed with the arrangement. Nathan watched from the doorway, his laptop bag still slung over his shoulder. The evidence boards in his home office were carefully concealed behind locked doors. Rachel's meticulous case files sat in his briefcase. Everything was ready. You're home early, Lily said without turning around, her voice carrying the practiced cheerfulness she had perfected over the past months. I thought you had the Harper meeting today. Postponed, Nathan replied, setting his bag down and noting how she tensed slightly at his unexpected presence. I thought we could talk. Now she turned, one hand instinctively moving to rest on her stomach, a gesture he had seen her perform countless times in photos with Steve. Actually, I'm glad you're here. there's something I've been wanting to tell you. Nathan leaned against the doorframe, forcing his expression into neutral curiosity. Oh. Lily moved to the kitchen table, arranging herself carefully in a chair. Everything about her was carefully staged these days. Her expressions, her stories, her entire performance of a devoted wife preparing for motherhood. I know things have been different lately, she began, her rehearsed speech evident in every word. I've been emotional, moody, and you've been so patient, even with all your work stress. Nathan said nothing. Watching her build the scene, she had likely practiced dozens of times. But there's a reason for everything, she continued, smiling as tears welled in her eyes right on cue. Nathan, we're going to have a baby. I'm pregnant. The moments stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Lily's smile began to falter at his lack of reaction. Honey, did you hear what I said? We're having a baby. No, Nathan said quietly. We're not. Confusion flickered across her face. What do you mean? Of course we are. I'm 5 months along. You're 5 months pregnant, Nathan agreed. But we're not having a baby. You and Steve are. The color drained from Lily's face. Her hand, still resting on her stomach, began to tremble. I don't. What are you? Would you like to know what else I know? Nathan's voice remained steady as he pulled out his phone. Every Wednesday afternoon at the Grand Regency Hotel, room 742, booked under S. Coleman, Steve's mother's maiden name. Quite romantic, using family history for your affair. Nathan, I can explain. The Christmas party, he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. That's when it started, wasn't it? While I was in the kitchen mixing drinks, you and Steve were planning your future. Did you laugh about it later? About how easy it was to fool everyone. Lily gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. How did you? Karen says hello, by the way. The name hit Lily like a blow. She flinched. Karen. She hired the first private investigator. Found the hotel receipts. The text messages. But I have to thank Richard Coleman for the really interesting stuff. Richard, Lily whispered, horror dawning in her eyes. He's been quite helpful. All those fake meeting minutes, doctored expense reports. He kept copies of everything. Very organized. Must be why Steve trusted him so much. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks, but they weren't the carefully orchestrated ones she'd used during her pregnancy announcement. Nathan, please. The Mexico plans were particularly detailed, Nathan said, watching her face crumble. Private schools already researched. Villa purchased. Offshore account set up. For your baby. Steve's baby. How long? Her voice was barely audible. How long have you known? About the affair? Since Karen came to me. About the pregnancy? I had a DNA test done months ago. About your plans to disappear to Mexico? Richard brought us that gift just recently. Lily's hands moved protectively over her stomach. Us. Karen. Rachel Grant. You remember her? The divorce attorney? She's been building quite the case. Nathan finally moved from the doorway, placing a thick folder on the table. We have everything, Lily. The affair. The fraud. The planned abandonment. Even Sarah's creative answering service for your Wednesday afternoon client meetings. Sarah would never. Sarah's been recording your calls for months. Insurance, she told Steve. Proof of your alibis. But those recordings work just as well as evidence for us. The carefully constructed facade Lily had maintained for months shattered completely. She sobbed, harsh, broken. Sounds that echoed in the sunlit kitchen. I loved him, she choked out. I love him. You were never there. Always working. Always with your numbers and spreadsheets. Paying for the life you're planning with another man, Nathan finished. Setting up college funds for a baby you knew wasn't mine. Working late to build a future you were busy destroying. What are you going to do? Lily whispered. Nathan gathered his files, his movements deliberate. Everything's already done. Rachel filed the papers this morning. Your boyfriend's wife did the same. Though I suppose you knew that was coming, since you helped plan his escape. You can't prove. We have Richard's testimony, Sarah's recordings, Mitch Hawkins' surveillance photos, DNA test results, and evidence of your planned flight to Mexico. Nathan met her eyes. Would you like me to continue? Lily reached for her phone with shaking hands. I need to call Steve. He's a bit busy at the moment. Something about his business partner presenting evidence of fraud to the board of directors. Nathan picked up his laptop bag. Did you really think you could take another man's child out of the country without consequences? The sound of car doors slamming outside drew their attention. Through the kitchen window, they saw Steve Hurley running up the driveway, his usual polished appearance in disarray. Behind him, Karen emerged from her own car, Rachel Grant at her side. Your timing was perfect, Nathan said, watching Steve pound on the front door. Announcing the pregnancy today, when you thought I was at a meeting, planning to share the joyful news with everyone at the country club lunch tomorrow. One last performance before your great escape. The doorbell rang, followed by more pounding. Lily's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages. You should answer it, Nathan suggested. After all, you have a lot to discuss. Flight plans to cancel, explanations to create, a future to rebuild from the ashes of all your lies. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Lily, soon to be his ex-wife, staring at the evidence of her unraveling lies. The sound of Steve's desperate knocking served as a fitting soundtrack to the collapse of their carefully constructed house of cards. The Riverside Country Club's usual Sunday brunch crowd buzzed with an energy unlike any other day. Sarah Kim sat alone at her usual table, watching whispered conversations and pointed glances ripple through the dining room. Like waves, her untouched mimosa had long since gone flat. May I join you? She looked up to find Lisa Park standing beside her, still wearing scrubs from her hospital shift. The nurse's expression was unreadable. Here to gloat? Sarah asked bitterly. Here to understand, Lisa replied, sitting without waiting for permission. You were her best friend since college. You stood beside her at her wedding. How could you help her do this? Sarah's laugh was hollow, void of humor. You want to know how? It was easy. So damn easy. Just answer the phone when she calls from her cell. Tell Nathan she's working late if he calls the house. Listen to her talk about Steve, about how alive he makes her feel, about the future they're planning. While lying to everyone who trusted you, Lisa added sharply. Sarah's voice cracked. I told myself I was being a good friend, supporting her happiness, protecting her choices. She trailed off, staring at her drink. When she got pregnant, you helped her deceive an innocent man, Lisa finished for her. Made him believe he was going to be a father while helping her plan her escape. She said Nathan was distant, uninterested, that he worked all the time, barely noticed her. He was working to support their future, Lisa said firmly. A future she was busy destroying. Sarah finally looked up, meeting Lisa's eyes. How long did you know? About the pregnancy? I suspected early on, Lisa admitted. But she shook her head. I thought they were happy, that they were waiting to announce it. None of us knew the full truth. Not really. Not the whole truth anyway, Richard Coleman's voice cut in. He stood awkwardly beside their table, his usual confidence replaced with visible shame. May I? Lisa gestured to the empty chair. The unlikely trio sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their role in the deception. I've given my official statement to the board, Richard said at last. About the fake business expansion, the fraudulent documents, everything. Steve's been suspended pending investigation. And Lily? Sarah asked. Last I heard, she's staying with her sister in Portland. After Nathan exposed everything, Richard ran a hand through his graying hair. I've never seen Steve so furious. When he realized I'd betrayed him. You did the right thing, Lisa said firmly. Eventually, Richard replied with a bitter smile. Too late to undo the damage. He stared down at his hands. I kept telling myself I owed Steve for helping me after Rachel passed away. That covering a few meetings, creating fake documents, it wasn't really hurting anyone. We all told ourselves something, Sarah whispered. I told myself I was protecting my best friend's happiness. You told yourself you were repaying a debt. The club's double doors swung open, drawing their attention. Nathan entered, accompanied by his lawyer, Rachel Grant. The dining room fell silent as they made their way to a corner table. He looks different, Sarah observed. Stronger somehow. He is stronger, Lisa said quietly. He didn't let this destroy him. He gathered evidence, built his case, and waited for the right moment. While we helped them deceive him, Richard added heavily.